I get asked a lot about how I come up with my stories, and it's not complicated when I try to figure it out in my head, but when I try to put it into words, it kind of gets complicated. But I thought I'd try to explain how I specifically come up with the stories that I come up with, because it's like, again, I have written almost 1,000 stories, so I have had come up with a lot of original ideas and different conflicts and different backgrounds and different characters and whatnot for my stories. And a lot of people do question and wonder, like, how the fuck are you able to do that shit? So I thought, let's just go on another little tangent rant, because why not, about all of that. So yeah, let me try and gather my thoughts for a moment, and we'll try and figure this out. First things first is my brain's on overdrive constantly, so there's a lot of things that constantly get jumbled in my head, which is why it's kind of super complicated to come up or even write some of my stories. It kind of all just depends on said fandom and about said person, because again, I write fan fiction, and I'm in a lot of different fandoms that I enjoy, like Pokemon, Supernatural, One Punch Man, Avengers, X-Men, and so on and so on. There's a lot of them, so I come up with a lot of different ideas and a lot of different character backgrounds, and if they have like superpowers, or like what kind of Pokemon they have, or and kind of just like the whole kind of basics of all of that. And and it kind of gets a bit frustrating and a bit complicated at times, but it's really cool how I'm able to come up with it. Normally how I come up with stories kind of influences on the things that I watch, and it can be from said fandom place, like again, Supernatural, Pokemon, or One Punch Man. It can kind of sort of be from specific episodes or have to do with like a specific event, but my writing, writing is kind of like your own thing, so like you can do whatever the fuck you want with it, because it's like it's your own world, your universe, your creation, so like you can do literally whatever you want, honestly. And that's what I love about it, and that's what I love. But it's also cool to kind of incorporate some episodes or kind of correlate like some events from said fandom, whether it's like an episode of something or part of a movie. I find it really cool, although one of the things is that it does take a long time, because if you're incorporating an episode or part of a movie to said story, and if you want to copy down dialogue while adding your own thing, it takes a while. I've done that a couple of times, and I was saying that working on one chapter for either an episode or a movie took me about 3 to 4 days. So, I mean, doing that is not a big problem. It goes a very long way in writing and makes your writing a lot longer, especially when you're incorporating said, part of whatever with your own stuff. So it kind of gives it that whole new kind of thing, which is pretty cool. But how I'm able to come up with so many things is, it just all kind of depends on what I watch, or technically what I read too, because I have a shit ton of books that I read from it, and like some of the ideas from it, some of the things that I read as well also kind of influence what I'm able to write down. It also doesn't even have to be a fan fiction. Like, I was watching Ghost Adventures a while ago, and it kind of helped me incorporate to writing a new horror book. I'm not usually one to write horror, but I've been trying, because I've been wanting to do a crossover of Rant High School Host Club with a corpse party, which is a whole new other rant that I think I mentioned in the highlights that I posted. I think it's somewhere in there. But anyways, yeah, so technically what I kind of do is I kind of just think of like a big conflict first. I think that's kind of what I do first, is I think of a bit of the conflict of a story and kind of go along from it also helps. It also helps because what I do is I figure out who said fandom is gonna be about. So take I don't know. Give me a moment. So what I do, we'll just take Harry Potter for example. Say if I'm writing about, I don't know, Oliver Wood, I just come up with a random girl character name. That's what I do. I use generators for that, or I come up with a name off the top of my head. I do that, and then I come up with like the age and whatnot, which they're all age range, whatever, all mature ages. And what I do from there is I also do the story title, and I kind of base off my stories based off of the story title. And then from there I kind of base the story description off of the story title. And it also kind of depends, because sometimes I like to cross universes. I talked about that before, so I'm not going to talk about it again. But if it's just a regular story, I come up with the character. If it's most of my stories are also pretty depressing, because again, it's how I cope with my issues, so I incorporate some of my bullshit onto that. So that's kind of a way to get everything out, which is a good way to do so. And I kind of figure out like the background of my character, you know, and then I kind of just think of it from there. So like the first chapters that I do is always just introducing the character, like her background, and you know, and then the second chapter is always kind of like a day in the life of, you know, what the character does and all of that. And then from so forth, it kind of gets easier, because it's easier to kind of go with the flow of things. So you kind of just, again, if it's Harry Potter and if it's, you know, about any character, or as I put Oliver Wood, then you think of what that character does, and then you figure out how your character can interact with them, and then you can add, you know, whoever, you know. And then conflict is also pretty easy, because I've been through a lot, so it's like I kind of just put in my own bullshit in there, or, you know, whatever kind of bullshit conflict was in Harry Potter. So like Draco bullying people, or if you want to add, like, incorporate part of the movie, like I used Prisoner of Azkaban for one of my stories that was about George Weasley, and it turned out really good. I honestly really liked how that came out. I also used Prisoner of Azkaban for another story, I was thinking of the same story. I used Goblet of Fire for another story that was about Oliver Wood that I really love how it turned out. So that's how I'm able to do that. And then, of course, what I've been doing now is, because it's easier to come up with chapters, just to come up with all the chapters, because again, I only go to chapter 21 unless I make book sequels, if people want me to make book sequels on my Wattpad, and then I'll try and incorporate that, which I'm not really sure how I'm going to do, because I've never done it before yet. But from there, because I kind of correlate the story based on the chapters, it's easier to figure out what it's going to be about. And because I also do this thing where I kind of look through the chapters, and if I have something specifically for that chapter, I'll write it down, and then I'll come back to it, you know, once I actually get there, and if I have to add more to it. And it's also because I'm very forgetful, and I forget a lot of shit, so it's easier just to write down what I have in my head the first minute that I get it, because I don't want to forget it. It's also how I finish stories a lot faster. I would say normally I finish stories, I don't know how much of an average, because it depends. It honestly depends, because I think the fastest story that I think I finished took about maybe 2 weeks, but that's honestly, I think, the shortest story that I ever have, because it wasn't long enough nor very well detailed. But it was years ago when I first started getting into writing, so but I think on average, I think it takes me maybe a month-ish, couple weeks to a month to finish a story. And it also depends on how obsessed I am with the person or the fandom. But because my fandoms change so often, and because my brain is on overdrive constantly, it becomes a little bit harder to incorporate, or a little harder to finish that story, because there's just so much stories that I've written that I am super excited to work on, that I have so many plans for, that my brain can't focus on one story at once. So that's why it takes me a lot longer to finish the stories. So but yeah, I think that is generally how I'm able to come up with my stories. Again, I don't know if people listen to this. I don't know if people care, because it's me we're talking about, and I don't think people enjoy when I rant. I don't know. People look at these, but I don't know if they actually would look through them or they just skip through, but I enjoy writing and talking about it, so yeah. Also, apologize if that was also a little bit harder to figure out. I normally don't talk about how extensively it is to come up with my stories. I always just go with the basics. It either depends, or I get it from the things that I watch or read. That's pretty much just the flat out basic line, but I thought I'd put it in more detail of how this works, on how the actual thinker works. So yeah, hope you enjoyed, if you listened to it. If not, that's okay too, whatever. So yeah, I like it a lot. It's very cool. It's how I'm able to write 1,000 stories, so almost 1,000 stories. Yeesh. Even still thinking about that is like, how in the fuck? I don't know, it just happens.